In this video, we're going to work with the vector drawing tools in combination with selection tools. I like to have the layers of panel open, and here is our select tools. And our vector tool section here, it's different than the bitmap a little bit. Let's start with a line tool. Vectors are paths, and they're made up of an anchor point, which you click on to leave an anchor point, and in between paths. But if I just click here, it just leaves a small anchor point. Let's get rid of that. If I click and drag, I can hold down my shift key and it will perfectly line it up across, or at a 45-degree angle or a 90-degree angle. Your shift key is very useful when making shapes. Okay, each vector line or path, each of the shapes are made up of vectors, and there are a set of regular shapes and unusual shapes. But each has a fill and a stroke color. So the stroke color is actually your outline, and where you see the paint bucket, that is your fill color in the colors area of the tools. So let's select a couple, and I want to make a rectangle by clicking and dragging. If I use the shift key to hold that down, it makes a perfect square, or I can let go of it and make it any shape, horizontal or vertical I want. And you can see here in the properties panel, width, height, I could change as well. If you click and hold down and select a different shape, then I could go ahead and select some different colors, even in the properties panel, instead of the color in the section of the tool panel. I could go to the properties to get the same thing going. And I have a little more control as well. So let's make some changes, and I'll make a circle instead, or an ellipse. And again, holding down the shift key, I can make a perfect circle, or I can just make an oval. Okay, so it's click, drag, and let go. Let's toggle these colors back and forth. We can do that. And we can make a polygon, and in the properties we can make changes to the sides and angles. Let's change the colors of that as well, the fill and the stroke color. Okay, I like to make something that's a little bit related, a dark and a light color, contrasty color. And we can hold the shift key down. It just makes it a little bit more straight. It doesn't change the shape of it. Okay, individually we can move them around, and then in the properties panel, for whatever shape that you are or have drawn, then you can change the width, the X and Y position, its properties for the outline and the fill. So all of these control what the different shapes look like. So if I change the fill type, then I can fill it with a different color. I could make it a texture, or a anything that I want to, like a gradient. Okay, so using the properties panel for anything that I draw, then we can make changes before or after we start to draw them. Now vector shapes, we can stack them one on top of the other. They're pretty much solid pieces, and paths, the paths that are the lines that and the shapes that we draw, they are separate from each other, and we can move them around and stack them up if we like to. Individually changing the shape to them, we can modify them. They're made up of anchor points, and you can see on the corners of this shape, if we click on it with the direct selection tool, okay, we see this little warning. Don't worry about it. We have to edit it. We need to ungroup it. Okay, that means it releases each of the anchors of the shape. These are pre-made shapes, so we're just clicking and dragging. And then with the sub-selection tool, we can grab the individual anchor points. If I select by clicking and dragging across a couple of them, then I can click and move 2 anchor points or more at the same time, depending on which ones I have selected. Okay, unselected ones are an empty little tiny square, and selected ones are, the anchor points are solid. Okay, click on an anchor point, and ones that are curved instead of a corner, they have these little handles, and we can move those anchor points around. If you hold the shift key, it will go in one straight direction, 90 degrees or perpendicular. Let's make another shape. Can we make one on top of this? Let's make a little egg. Okay, it's going to be so cute. All right, I want a perfect circle. Drawing illustrations, just keep it simple. Simple shapes on top of other shapes. You can make something pretty special. And just modify some of these shapes and stack them up on top of each other. Okay, I want to move these off to the side. Unfortunately, we can't see what's off on the actual drawing board, but I wanted to address these special ones. Why are they sectioned out? Well, those particular special shapes, they have some controls, and Fireworks is one of the only ones that does this, really, having pre-made shapes that have these particular points or anchor points. It's yellow little diamonds, and if you hover over them, they'll tell you what they do. Okay, this one's width and height. So I click and drag on, grabbing a hold of that little diamond, it does a particular task. Okay, and you just have to experiment with each of the shapes. This one happens to have particular controls. The other ones, the other shapes do also have their particular controls. So I'm just kind of playing around with it and making use of its controls. This, I can change the corner of it. Okay. Fill it with some other color. Fantastic. Put a different stroke around it. Try to avoid Christmas colors, thank you. All right, I like similar colors, but with a little contrast. Okay, let's try a different one, just for demo's sake. This has different controls here. The chamfer, it's the corners. If you hover over it and click and drag, it will make a different variation on this particular shape. And then this corner will change the shape as well. So you just have to experiment with these. I'm not going to go through each and every one. Now, using your other selection tool where you're transforming, like this one right here is a scale tool. We can skew it, and you want to click in the middle little anchor. This is a bounding box that you, when you select any of these transform tools, in the corners and the handles that are in the middle, they do different things. You grab a hold of them and move them around. This one's distorting it. Okay, so I distorted it a great deal, really, and once I get into the shape itself with the sub-selection tool, okay, now I'm kind of moving away from what that automatic shape does, and it gives me a warning. But I can still distort it, and I just say, okay, or if I don't want to see that anymore, don't show again. That's kind of dangerous to turn that off. I like the warnings. Okay, some fun things that we have available to us to distort things. Okay, this other set of tools, this particular one, all right, again, it may behave unpredictably, but that's okay. Let's try it again on another piece, the free transform. If you click on the outline or the stroke, and we can modify it, it adds more anchor points. We can reshape it, click and drag that one point, and it just goes on and adds all these anchor points. How wonderful. You can do just about anything that you want to with these things. Okay, the scrubber tool, the additive and subtractive, it can only be used on paths. Now, if you have pressure sensitive, meaning you have a Wacom tablet, okay, so I don't have one of those, I'm not going to be working on it, but that's okay. we can do a lot with all of these things.